A man goes to work like any other day. He doesn't touch anything strange. He doesn't eat anything unusual. He just breathes. And days later, his lungs collapse from an enemy he never saw because the weapon wasn't in a bomb. It was in the wind. In April 1979, in the industrial city of Sverdlovsk, today known as Yekaterinburg, the Soviet Union was building more than tanks and turbines. Hidden behind fences and paperwork, there were sites that did not exist on maps and did not exist in conversations. One of those sites was a military complex later linked to a biological weapons program, something the world wasn't supposed to prove, only suspect. On or around April 2, 1979, an accidental release of anthrax spores occurred from a Soviet military facility. To understand the horror here, you have to understand the enemy. It's microscopic, it's durable, and it's patient. Some accounts describe a failure involving air handling systems filters, ventilation, the kind of boring infrastructure that never gets a movie scene until it kills people. The result wasn't an explosion. It wasn't traumatic. It was a cloud you couldn't see. And then the city kept living like nothing happened. People started showing up at hospitals with what looked like a severe respiratory illness, fever, weakness, chest pain, rapidly worsening breathing. This is where the psychological terror begins. It doesn't feel like poisoning. It feels like you caught something. And then it escalates so fast you can't bargain with it. What investigators later found is chilling in its simplicity. Victims weren't to spread randomly across the city. Many were located along a narrow zone, downwind from the facility. Like the wind drew a straight line, and the disease followed it. Then the second horror arrived, the official story. Soviet authorities blamed contaminated meat and animal outbreak, bad food, reckless butchers. That explanation did two things at once. It redirected fear away from a military facility. It isolated blame onto ordinary people, workers, vendors, families. And in a system built on silence, a lie doesn't just spread. It replaces reality. Behind the scenes, records were controlled. Conversations were dangerous. In outbreaks, information saves lives. In Sverdlovsk, information became contraband. Years later, when the Cold War began to thaw, the pattern still didn't fit the bad meat story. Because meat doesn't strike in a straight wind-shaped corridor. Air does. Researchers examined where people were that day and what the weather was doing. The geography of death lined up with the direction of the prevailing wind, an epidemiological fingerprint pointing to an airborne release. For years, it was denied. And then, in 1992, Boris Yeltsin, who had once been a senior official in Sverdlovsk, publicly acknowledged the outbreak was caused by a military incident. Teams of Western and Russian scientists revisited the evidence. One of the most cited investigations was led by Matthew Meselson of Harvard University, working with colleagues including Massachusetts Institute of Technology affiliates, piecing together interviews, medical data, and the outbreak's geometry. Most commonly cited figures report dozens dead off and around, 66 fatalities in Soviet-era accounts, while exact totals remain debated due to secrecy and incomplete records. Sverdlovsk wasn't haunted by a monster. It was haunted by a system that could release something deadly, and then edit reality until families questioned their own memories. That's the Cold War horror, not just secret programs, but the way secrecy becomes a second weapon. Because an invisible pathogen is terrifying. But an invisible pathogen plus a government that gaslights an entire city? That's how history turns into a nightmare you can't wake up from. For real stories that scare from paperwork, not ghosts, then subscribe. Next time, another true event that sounds impossible. Until you read the files.